Wednesday, hour 2. It's our exact middle of the week. Time to think a little bit about last week and a little bit about next week in college football. Chip Patterson, Cover 3 podcast moderator, CBSSports.com, my friend. Let's dig right in. Let's start with some talk about teams, and then we will get to our Week 2 field of 12. Does that sound like a plan?
I have thoughts about the premise, but let's talk about teams first.
All right.
Have you not heard me yell at Bud about this?
No.
Like I at the beginning of the season, I said trying to bracketologize the college football playoff invitational in September is the most boring thing that I could do. My brain is filled with so many things that I find are intriguing. People say week 3 has no interest. I've got 29 games that I'm excited about and only 23 that I have relegated to the wolf zone. Okay. So I think that trying to game this all the way out towards the end of the season when we haven't even gotten the initial opinions from the selection committee for the college football playoff invitational. I'm just, I'm
not interested in their opinions.
Yeah,
I'm not. I'll give you my 12, and we'll play off that.
Bud tried to say today, he was like, "Well, you got to think like if your only chance is an at-large, then maybe you rest this guy because it's not a conference game." And I was like, "What are we doing? We do not load manage a season that only has 12 regular season games. And by the way, this is 18 to 22-year-olds, most of whom are not going to play competitive football beyond this. You go and you make them quit." You make them quit and you play to win the game. Come on. Be a competitor out there. Don't load manage in college football because you're trying to game the system. Yuck.
I can't wait to do this already. Is Clemson back, Chip?
I tell you what. I want to know why Bryant Wesco only played 13 snaps against Georgia. Because that man only needed about 3 receptions to total 130 yards and a couple touchdowns. And we had heard all spring practice and all fall camp about how this 5-star freshman was starting to maybe bring back the feels of when Clemson had every single year at least 1 and sometimes 2 legitimate future pros. And much love to Amari Rodgers. I know he made it to the league, but starting in 2020, that's when you started to see it really tail off. 2020, 21, 22, 23. You have players who are good, but not those different types of skill players like they had for so long, 2011 all the way until about 2019. And so I am excited. I would say that Clemson has big games, including, here in a couple weeks at home. Has big games that can help define the backness level of the Tigers. But I like this anecdote that I heard from Eric McLean of the ACC Network, who he was speaking from experience. He said, in 2011, you had some older guys who just weren't the same, and you could see younger guys, and that would be like Sammy Watkins, DeAndre Hopkins, that you could just see that things were starting to turn. And that's, something that that's something that I'm at least taking note of. I know that Eric McLean's going to be very excited about any positivity for Clemson. I say that lovingly, like he's a part of that program, and he's a part of that program's rise to what, it became and at its very peak. But that's an interesting observation to make. So
the reason I talked about it is because, as we said last week, somebody's going to win the league, right? And I was hesitant to judge the Clemson offense, although quarterback didn't look good. Again, it was Georgia. I was hesitant to judge because it was Georgia. And I'm going to fold this into NC State in a second. Did we see enough other than when it's 42-0, 2.5 minutes into the second quarter?
Right.
I mean, yes, they just jumped all over App State and they boat raced them. Part of me wants to see Cade Klubnik and the offense in a tighter ball game before I know exactly what it's going to be, because sometimes when it's too easy, you really don't learn anything. And I'm hoping that we see a better version of NC State 2 weeks from now in Death Valley, because I think that's when we're going to learn about both teams the rest of the way.
There's, not to get too nitty gritty on this one, but there were elements of the TCU 2022 offense that seemed to show up in that game against App State. And maybe you just didn't have, against a team like Georgia, like you could not make the kinds of sacrifices in terms of bodies that, you're going to be able to do when you're going to be able to spread some of these other teams out. It's this like dink dunk home run that Max Duggan, who by the way is like not a tremendous talent, raw tools type player, but we remember, he led TCU to a 12-0 regular season. They make it all the way to the national championship game. They beat Michigan in the semifinals. And a lot of that TCU offense was based on easy throw, bomb it down the sidelines. And there was this little like fake bubble screen, throw it down the sidelines to your playmaker. Some of that was a lot of those early touchdowns. That to me was confidence building for Cade. That was giving him some juice, because everything, and I said this last week, every word out of Clemson was about his growth, and it was coupled with a qualifier at the very end, but he needs to bring it to Saturday. So it's between his ears, and if that was a confidence building decision to roll out and pile on, it could have worked. We'll see.
Easy throw, big play. That's what Dave Canales should be doing with Bryce Young. Now let me fold the same Clemson versus Georgia. Can't really take everything out of it because it's Georgia. Let me take that same thing and to a lesser extent make it about NC State and what happened against Tennessee. I still believe, I said this yesterday, and I believe this, the outcome, the way it played out, tells us that even if that drive that ultimately had the pick six make it 17-3, even if that drive ends with an NC State touchdown and it's 10-10, I think the rest of the game tells us that it probably would have gone Tennessee's way anyway. So we were probably just keeping it more competitive until late before Tennessee finally flexed and did that. But do we completely discount NC State because they might not face a better front four? They might not face a better offense all season than they just faced in the Vols. Can State still have what amounts to a great season?
Yeah. They just aren't, they don't have margin the way that I thought they had margin, right? There is a group of the ACC that like is just all clumped together and they are in that clump, and I thought that they were above it. I thought that there was such a talent advantage that NC State was going to have from the way that the pieces had been assembled, that they were going to be able to, roll through and have these two huge games in September and then just have to be able to manage expectations the rest of the way. But what I saw from Syracuse, what I saw from Northern Illinois, what I see from there's a lot of teams on that schedule that were Sharpie W's that we got to get white out. Right. Because they are a lot more of a coin flip. And so this is what I mean by the clump. NC State is not so far ahead of the rest of the teams on its schedule that it can afford to throw a pick six in scoring position.
Right.
And those other teams that we thought were going to be not as good look a little bit better, which has created a log jam of about 9 teams in the ACC where from like a power ratings perspective, none are probably more than a touchdown different from the other. And what does that mean? It means it's going to come down to stuff that Dave Doran talks about all the time, which is winning the turnover battle. It's going to come down to not making those kinds of mistakes that are going to totally negate any type of forward progress that you have. It's going to come down to on third down when you need a stop, you get a stop. And on third down when you need a conversion, you're able to run the daggone ball to go get a conversion on third and short.
Right. So, well, they can't run it.
Hey, I think that this is where NC State could still wind up at the end of the season 9-3 to go win a 10th game in the bowl game. They could. They could. but it means coming up on the right side of far more coin flips than I thought NC State was going to face. And if NC State makes some of those mistakes that they made in the game against Tennessee to let it get out of hand, then they will not end up on the right side of enough coin flips to make it to give themselves a chance for those 10 wins.
Chip Patterson is joining us as he does every Wednesday. Cover 3 podcast. You can listen to him yell at Bud Elliott. At the beginning of the season...
Bud just called me. I wonder if he's listening. He might be. I mean, I know this is an unprecedented statewide platform, but maybe down in Orlando, he's got you streaming.
He's watching it on YouTube. I'm sure he is. We'll just wave to Bud. At the beginning of the season, we talked about 7 teams being in a top tier, even if there were even tiers within that top tier, right? Based on what we thought the schedule was presenting to each team, what we thought they had.
We'll kick SMU out. Let's just go ahead and
I wrote down, I mean, the way you're talking, you've kicked NC State out as well, and I'm not arguing with you. Florida State, obviously out. Virginia Tech, obviously out, even though that loss to Vanderbilt, while alarming in and of itself, I put in the same category as I do a lot of these other non-conference losses. I mean, if it's an outlier, and we'll find out as we get further on into the season, because it is not a conference loss, maybe it's just one of those things that happen, but I'm willing
I thought they should have brought the hammer to Marshall. I'll follow that up on the Hokies real quick. I think that Marshall should not have been as competitive in that game, or the score should not have been that close. But
okay,
yeah,
so I actually wrote down kicking FSU out, kicking SMU out, kicking Virginia Tech out, jury out on NC State. But so we're talking about a top tier of Clemson, Miami, and Louisville at this point.
Correct.
Okay, that's fair. And then you've got, like, what do we believe of BC? Like, Bill O'Brien is an excellent football coach.
Correct.
Excellent football coach. And he's right when he said about BC, this is a place you can win. They have a traditional style, I mean, beefy linemen on both sides of the ball, running the football. They've got a very good quarterback. I mean, could BC, and I know they play Missouri this week, could BC be like the surprise of this league?
I think what you're looking for is Syracuse. I think that's the team that could be the surprise. The team that I had rated with the most manageable strength of schedule in the entire ACC coming into the season, that has gone out with Kyle McCord, currently, I believe, tied for first in the country with 8 touchdowns through 2 weeks of the year, 735 yards passing. The story at Syracuse with what Fran Brown is doing is really, really impressive. He came from Georgia staff,
right?
He's a Camden, New Jersey guy, and a lot of these assistant coaches are from Philly, from New Jersey. Kyle McCord from Philly. They went to all the SEC schools, Georgia, Texas A&M, found anybody from the Northeast, got them out of the portal, got them out of the South. I think that there is a special story right now in the Dome where this team with a manageable schedule, a quarterback who they were trying to run out of town at Ohio State, they could wind up being a factor. How about this? The Miami Hurricanes have to come to the Dome in the last week of the regular season. Talk about like a terrifying letdown, type situation. We'll see. That the team that I'm looking for that could just creep up in there and really be a surprise, I think, is the Syracuse Orange.
It would be interesting because Syracuse has a history in my lifetime of consistently playing good football. I mean, it's
Oronde Gadsden, we've long talked about as one of the most gifted, tight end players. He's sort of like an all-encompassing weapon.
Don McPherson, Donovan McNabb. Yeah, I mean, they have played very good football. Dwight Freeney. I mean, they've had stars there. So I remember, I grew up. Syracuse football was certainly not anything to sneeze at. Let me ask you one quick question before I give you my 12. I'm not going to ask for your 12 because you don't care, but you'll react to my 12. Should the Big Ten be concerned with their national place in this college football season?
No, I don't think
Penn State was pretty unimpressive.
against Bowling Green. Oregon hasn't put it all together.
Right?
Michigan's nowhere close to being as good.
We don't know what Southern Cal is because we don't know what LSU is.
No, I'm the only one who stayed up to watch that Utah State game. Can't nobody tell me what USC is and ain't, because the Trojans' defense is legit.
Really? Wait, yes. A Lincoln Riley team has a good defense?
Things have changed.
All right.
Things have changed. They are actually showing good structural fundamentals. The open field tackling is working. I really think that USC, how about, I'm going to be on CBS Sports Network at 2:00 Eastern. And the opening question in the A block is, what Power 5 team are you the most impressed with, or has exceeded your expectations the most? And my answer is the USC Trojans, because I think they are a Big Ten title contender.
Okay.
That team is legit. And Nebraska is great at the line of scrimmage, and they have an elite talent at quarterback. I don't think that they're there yet for Matt Rule to be able to go and win the Big Ten. But there are teams like a USC and like a Nebraska that, as they are creeping up, or it's the similar situation to what we've got in the ACC. Some of these teams that we were burying before the season are better, and some of those teams in the top tier, so we thought, are actually maybe a little bit lower rated.
All right, so here's my 12. Here's my 4 conference champions. Texas over Georgia.
Sure.
The Texas win was at Michigan was super impressive. Could have been a lot worse. Ohio State, number 2. Miami, 3. Iowa State, 4.
Sure.
Good on the Cyclones to win at Ames, Iowa. Not at Iowa City. 5, Georgia. 6, Tennessee. 7, Alabama.
We'll see about the side.
Yeah, I mean, they were certainly not impressive until the fourth quarter against South Florida. 8, Mississippi. 9, Missouri. That is, by my count, 6 of the 12 teams from the SEC, which I would be in favor of, because all I care about is the best teams in these things. So when they go to these, we have 4 guaranteed spots or 3 guaranteed spots, and we get 3 guaranteed spots. I think these leagues, I think the SEC is selling itself short, because I think there's an argument to be made they could get 7 of the 12 teams this year, and they would be cutting off their hand and spite their face, or nose and spite their face, not hand. I've screwed that whole thing up. 10, I have USC. I had USC in already. 11, I've got Northern Illinois, and 12, I have Utah.
I am not. Oregon is a zipper that is stuck, and when, like a zipper that is stuck, once you get all the mess out of the way, it's going to be just fine.
Okay.
Penn State hasn't lost. They did not look good against Bowling Green, but they have not lost. I'm definitely willing to send Michigan down the road, and I think that if Cam Rising is healthy, the Utah Utes are a thunderous team. And Utah, I like your Iowa State call, but I think that Utah and Oklahoma State and Kansas State and Iowa State could potentially put a couple teams in, and I think there could be more teams from the ACC in there. I just didn't have anybody that would deserve it at this point, which is why I didn't put him in. That's the reason I put Iowa State in, because I watched them win a game on the road against the Power 5 ranked team. Even though I think Iowa's a fraud, doesn't matter. They still went on the road and won that game. So you're doing snapshot real time.
Yeah.
If today was,
I'm not projecting anything.
Okay. All right. That's fair. I will say,
I'm Jerry Palm about this, Chip.
I will say, They went to like 10-minute running quarters for Buffalo, Missouri. Like, I mean, I have never, excuse me, I don't want to say never. I have rarely seen it so blatantly obvious. It was the cash transaction of a buy game than when the new first-year head coach, because remember, Mo Lindquist left his position as Buffalo's head coach to go be an assistant for Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. Right now, the Alabama defensive staff has 3 former head coaches on it, which good luck cooks in the kitchen when you've got a bunch of freshman cornerbacks out there and you're trying to fix your pass defense problems, but that's for another time. So a first-year head coach at Buffalo, after one half of playing against Eli Drinkwitz, comes out the midfield, is like, all right, Eli, like, let's go 10-minute quarters and let's make this a running clock.
Perfect.
Let's go. Yeah, give me the check on the way out the door and we'll be good. I mean, that was so painfully obvious that the only thing we're doing here is a glorified scrimmage. So I look forward to Missouri playing a team with a pulse this Saturday as Boston College comes to town.
Are you smelling upset, Chip, as I say goodbye?
No. I think that Boston College will have trouble stopping Missouri's offense enough to actually be an upset. I do think Thomas Castellanos in the run game will be able to score some points.
That is Chip Patterson.
Smelling an over.
Cover 3 podcast where he yells at Bud Elliott. It'll be on CBS Sports Network coming up at 2:00. I'll talk to you next week, my man. Thank you.
Sounds good. Y'all be well.